My wife compared me to her friend's perfect husband. My comparison made her perfectly single. She wanted perfection, got perfect karma instead. Update 4. I looked back at my wife, who was now pale and completely speechless. I told her that starting tomorrow, she would be completely free to pursue the kind of marriage she'd been describing to me. No more settling for a husband who didn't bring flowers every Friday. No more compromising with someone who didn't cook elaborate romantic dinners. No more being disappointed by a man who couldn't live up to her clearly defined standards. Her friend's husband finally found his voice and tried to interrupt, saying that this wasn't what anyone wanted, and that maybe we should all calm down and talk this through. He looked genuinely distressed about being used as a weapon in our marriage. I thanked him for his concern, but explained that this conversation had been building for weeks. His marriage had been held up as the gold standard that mine could never reach, and my wife had been very thorough in explaining all the ways that I fell short of his example. I told him that I actually appreciated him showing my wife what she really wanted from a marriage. It had helped me understand that we were fundamentally incompatible, and that she would be much happier with someone who could meet her clearly articulated expectations. My wife finally found her voice and started to protest, saying that I was misunderstanding everything she'd been trying to tell me. She said she just wanted me to be a better husband, not to end our marriage entirely. I looked at her with genuine curiosity, and asked her to explain exactly how I was misunderstanding. I asked her to clarify which parts of her month-long comparison campaign I had interpreted incorrectly. Did she not say that her friend's husband was everything that I wasn't? Did she not explain that I needed to completely change who I was to be acceptable as her partner? She was trapped and she knew it. Every word she'd said for the past month had been documented in my memory. And now she was being asked to defend those statements in front of the very people she'd used as examples. The evening was far from over, but the foundation had been laid. My wife's perfect dinner party had become the setting for her perfect divorce announcement, and there was no way for her to take back the weeks of disrespect that had led us to this moment. My wife was scrambling now, trying to backtrack from weeks of systematic comparison, but I wasn't going to let her rewrite history in front of witnesses. She'd wanted a public demonstration of marriage standards, and she was going to get exactly that. I turned to her friend and spoke directly to her since she'd been used as an unwitting prop in this drama. I apologized for the position my wife had put her in by constantly using her marriage as ammunition against ours. I explained that her husband had been turned into a weapon without his consent, and that their private relationship had been violated by being used as a measuring stick for our problems. Her friend looked absolutely mortified. She finally spoke up and told my wife that she had no idea this had been happening, and that she never would have shared details about her marriage if she'd known they were being used to attack her husband. She looked genuinely upset about being part of this situation. I thanked her for being honest, then looked at her husband. I told him that I held no grudge against him for being perfect, but that I thought he should understand how his perfection had been weaponized in our home. Every good thing he did for his wife had been turned into evidence of my failures as a husband. He looked increasingly uncomfortable, and tried to downplay his role, saying that every marriage was different, and that he'd never meant to be compared to anyone else. He was clearly a decent guy who was horrified to discover he'd been used this way. That's when I delivered the comparison that would destroy my wife completely. I looked around the table and told everyone that I'd learned something very important from observing their marriage tonight, and from listening to my wife's commentary about it for the past month. I said that the most striking difference between their marriage and ours wasn't about flowers or romantic dinners or financial success. The real difference was how the wives talked about their husbands. Her friend had spent the entire evening speaking positively about her husband, giving him credit for things, showing appreciation for his efforts. My wife, on the other hand, had spent a month and an entire dinner party pointing out everything wrong with hers. She'd used another man as proof that her own husband was inadequate in every meaningful way. She'd systematically torn down her marriage in pursuit of some impossible standard. The silence at that table was crushing. My wife was staring at me with growing horror as she realized where this was leading. Her friend was looking at her with something between pity and disgust. Her husband was studying his wineglass like it held the secrets of the universe. I continued the comparison with surgical precision. I pointed out that her friend had a husband who felt appreciated and respected in his own home. I had a wife who made sure I understood how disappointing I was on a daily basis. Her friend had a partner who built him up. I had a partner who used other men to tear me down. I asked the table which marriage sounded healthier to them. Which dynamic seemed more likely to create happiness and stability for both partners? Which approach to handling marriage problems seemed more constructive and loving? My wife tried to interrupt, saying that I was twisting everything she'd said and that she'd only been trying to help our marriage grow. She claimed that constructive criticism was important in any relationship. I agreed that constructive criticism was valuable, then asked her to point out any constructive elements in spending a month comparing your husband unfavorably to another man. I asked her to explain how systematic comparison to an impossible standard was supposed to build up our relationship rather than destroy it. She couldn't answer because there was no good answer. She'd been caught using emotional warfare disguised as marriage improvement. And now she was being forced to defend tactics that were obviously destructive when examined in the light. Now you can watch the 5th part by pressing share and more.